There's a way of muting the microphone here if I need to. If somebody walks in here.
You should be able to right click on yourself and mute it if you're using the GoToMeeting microphone. I can mute you.
I have a button on the top of mine that shows the microphone and it's green if I'm
Okay, I
on.
see that.
Yep.
Okay, apparently it works because I just asked you a question you didn't hear.
Yep, didn't hear you.
All right.
And there's Aaron. Hi, Aaron. And we're waiting for one more on my list, and then we'll start. We'll give it one more minute, and then it'll be officially 10 o'clock, and I'll start. And I do have right now. I do have everybody muted. I'll unmute you in just a second. All right. I just unmuted everybody. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get started. What this is designed to be is kind of a user administration overview of Office 365. I'll show you a bit about getting started with Office 365, loading applications on your computer, dealing with users. We'll talk a little bit about licensing, how that all works, and we'll kind of go from there. I'll leave everybody unmuted unless there's too much noise. If there's too much noise, I'm going to mute you all and then make you raise your hand. But as we're going along here, if you have questions, please ask. Let's go to my next slide here. Everybody should see my Office 365 slide. I've only got 4 or 5 slides in here, so it's not really going to be a slideshow. It's going to be more of a show and tell. And again, if you have questions, please ask. As far as from management concepts, the people of interest that deal with our Office 365 are myself. I'm Brian Jones. I'm doing the presentation here. I've been involved with Microsoft products since basically the inception of Microsoft. We at Management Concepts have been doing we at Management Concepts have been doing Microsoft stuff again since its inception, and I've been pretty much involved in that. Glenn Bell does a lot of our system support related to Office 365. He does a lot of the conversions and a lot of the kind of back end work and some of the support work. Jim Larson also helps out with Office 365 and is available to answer questions and things like that. So we've got a pretty good team here that's up on Office 365, and we do have quite a few customers that have been migrating to it. So kind of the agenda here, things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to go through the Office 365 versions. We'll talk about kind of what is Office 365. We'll go into the administrative portal. I'll show you again users and email and things like that. We'll go into client setups. I'll show you how the software gets loaded on a PC, how it gets all associated. And then we'll go into some questions that we get from customers with regards to email. That's probably the biggest thing right now that we find people using Office 365 for. Hello? Everybody can hear me okay, right? I'm not just kind of talking to myself?
Yep.
Okay, good. And then finally, we'll finish up with mobile devices and what you can do. I've got an iPad here that I'll bring up on the screen, and I'll show you how to connect your email to an iPad, which is a typical thing. It would be the same as on a phone. I'll show you a little bit about the apps on a mobile device. Start by talking about what Office 365 is. Office 365, I think, is Microsoft's attempt to take the Microsoft products. When I say Microsoft products, Microsoft Office, the traditional Word, Excel, PowerPoint, that kind of stuff that you have on your PC, Microsoft Email, which is Exchange Server, Microsoft SharePoint, which is the web collaboration stuff, Microsoft Lync or Skype, it's now called, is the communicator or the instant messaging, and then there's a bunch of other pieces to it. They're almost trying to make this stuff like a utility. So instead of going out and buying these servers and maintaining all of these things at your locations, you're able to simply subscribe. And for a low monthly fee, you get various features. And what you see up on your screen in front of you is are the business versions of Office 365. They start as low as $5 a month, and they go up to $20 a month, again, depending on the features and functions that you want. Common things that we find our customers do. Office 365 Business Essentials, if we start on the left side, Business Essentials basically includes just email and the OneDrive file sharing stuff. Office 365 Business adds, or not adds, it just is the Office product. So instead of paying $200 basically for a standard version of Microsoft Office, or it's $500 for a professional version of Microsoft Office, you can buy that same version of Office for $825 a month. And I'm not smart enough to do my math, but that's, over 3 years, it adds up to about the same. But what happens is you're always kept current with a subscription here. There's no upgrade fees, there's no whatever, but again, the trade-off is you pay forever as well. Office 365 Business Premium basically combines the first two items. You get the Microsoft Office products that you can load on your PCs, as well as the email and the collaboration and things like that. And we'll go out in just a second here. We'll pop out to the actual website for this, where you can see all the features and all of the things. Enterprise gets you into the bigger versions of Office 365. A big difference is that the Enterprise includes what's called Pro Plus version of Microsoft Office, and that essentially gets you Microsoft Access. So if you need Microsoft Access in addition to PowerPoint, Excel, and Word and Outlook, you need an enterprise version, or you have to buy Access as a separate thing. So that's $12 a month compared to the $8.25 in the business one. And then the enterprise, the far right column, basically gets you everything. It gets you some voice capability. It gets you some email archiving, things like that. We don't have a lot of customers that do the enterprise. Probably the most common that we run across is the Office 365 Business Premium, which includes both the email and the Office products. Another cool thing about Office 365 is that if you have the Office products as part of it, so again, the Business Premium, the Business, the Pro Plus, or the Enterprise E3, you're able to load 5 copies of Microsoft Office on your devices. This is neat because if you have, again, most people have a workstation at their desk that they work on all day long. They might have a laptop. They might have a PC at home. They might have a second laptop. All with one copy of Office, or one copy of Office 365, I should say, one subscription of Office 365, you get licenses to be able to load on all of those devices. Okay. You also need Office 365 licenses if you want to run Office on your iPad, your phone, that kind of stuff. That's the only way you can get those types of things. Are there any questions so far? And if not, I'm just going to keep talking. Let me pop out of my PowerPoint here. Let's go to the, let me bring up the Office page. If you want to see more information about what exactly is included in the different things of Office, a simple thing to do is go to www.office365.com. And Office 365 does have a home edition. Home basically just includes the basic versions of Microsoft Office. When I say basic, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Does not include Microsoft Outlook, so it doesn't include the Outlook client. But that's, if you go buy a PC from Best Buy or something like that, and they offer, here's Office 365, that's typically what they include is the home version. And that's, again, that gets you the basics of Office. What we're interested in is the for business side, and then we click on see plans and pricing. And it starts out with the business plans, and I can scroll down the screen to see what's included so you can compare things. Again, the Office 365 Business, oops, no, I don't want to talk to them. The Office 365 Business does not include email and calendaring and that kind of stuff. So you got to keep that in mind. You need Essentials or Premium to get that, or you need a combination thereof. The other thing you can do with Office 365 is you can mix and match plans. So you might have users in your environment that only need email and don't need the full-blown Office stuff. So, instead of paying $12.50 a month for everybody, you can pay $5 a month for those that just need email and $12.50 a month for those that don't. You didn't used to be able to mix and match plans in Office 365. This changed about 6-8 months ago. And then if we want to see the enterprise stuff, we can see more. Comes down, and again, we can scroll through, and it shows you on a chart here as to, again, what's included, what's not included. Most of the Office pricing is an annual commitment. They show it in a per month price, but to get that price, it requires a year commitment. In the case of the enterprise stuff, I don't even know that you can buy it per month. I don't believe you can. In the case of the business stuff, you can purchase it on a monthly basis as well. It still requires an annual, a monthly commitment. So I can do a monthly commitment on the business stuff, but notice the price goes up. Or I can do, again, an annual commitment. On the enterprise stuff, it does require a year. So you can't, pay 6 months and then decide you don't want it, that type of thing. You can also upgrade plans for users. So for example, say you start with Office 365 Business Premium for a user at $12.50 a month and decide that, hey, I need some of the features of Enterprise for this user. There is an upgrade process where we can take that $12.50 and turn it into the $20 a month without losing your data and losing your time and licenses and that kind of stuff. So we can move up in the tree as far as the licensing goes. You typically, however, cannot move backwards. So if I have an E3 and want to go to a business premium, what that is it's buy a business premium, let that one expire, and we migrate the data. Doesn't go backwards as easy as it goes forwards. Okay, so that's pretty much Office licensing. And again, you can go out to the Office 365 webpage and poke around and see what the versions are, things like that. Any questions before I actually get into the product? Again, I assume you're all still there.
Yep.
All right, cool. All right. What I want to do now is I want to get into the Office 365 portal and minimize this. The Office 365 portal is where all the magic happens. The site for that is https portal.office.com. Okay, portal.office.com is where administrators can go. It's also where end users can go to get into Office 365. Now, I've created myself a test account in Office 365 here. Basically, it's a mid-sized business test account. And if you want to play with Office 365, that's a great thing to do. We can either send you test account invites, or you can go to the Office page and do it. Again, I'd rather send you the invites, but I have a user. I log in basically with my username. My username here I created was admin. I'm going to log in, and I see the Office 365 portal screen. Let me just put that in the middle. I see the Office 365 portal screen. Okay, depending on what type of user I am and depending on the plan that I have, that's what controls what shows up on this screen. Again, I'm a mid-sized business. I'm not an E3 plan, so I do not have. Notice I do not have Microsoft Access listed here as one of my products. Okay, but this is kind of the general look of the screen. You manipulate things really though by clicking over in the left corner here, and if I click on that, it expands all of the features and functions of Office 365 I have. Well, I want to go into administration, so I'm going to go to the admin button, and that's going to change my screen to the Microsoft Office 365 admin. So the left side here allows me to go into the applications, and admin is important to me. Right side controls my specific user things. In this case, I'm logged in as Management Concepts Test. If I wanted to adjust things for myself, I can click on the gear over here. I can change, the background, all that kind of stuff. And there's some other things I can do with the gear, but that controls the personal things for the user. Okay, so once you subscribe to an Office 365 account, you will create as part of that subscription, or we'll create it for you, one of the two. We'll create an administrative account. Okay. Right now, again, I'm logged in as an administrative account. First thing then that you typically do, again, there's other stuff that goes on in the background, such as setting up DNS and technical stuff to make the email flow and stuff like that. That stuff we typically set up, but end users would typically go in and, hey, how do I deal with users? Okay, Office 365 is no good if I just have an administrator. I've got to create people in my company that can come in and do things in here. If I click on users, I can go to active users. In this case, I've created a slew of test users. And I'll show you what these mean in a bit. But some things that are important here. The right side here has a status. It lists as in cloud. My choices are in cloud or synced with Active Directory. If you're a bigger environment, we can actually take your Office 365 and synchronize it with your local login accounts on your PC in your office. Okay, this is cool because now everything is controlled through my local domain and my local security and my local users that I'm used to back in my Windows Active Directory domain, which again, I hope I'm not getting overly techy here. If it is in cloud, which is what these users are, the users are controlled completely through this Office 365 portal. If they're Active Directory users, they're controlled through your Active Directory and through your domain at your office. You have to then manipulate them through your Active Directory domain at your office. Okay? So you can't change them, delete them in here. It will tell you you're not allowed. You have to change them, delete them on site. So again, typically the larger customers, the larger numbers of users will have it Active Directory integrated. We can also do a synchronization process where we synchronize your password from your PC at your desk to Office 365. So you're not dealing with, hey, I've got a different Office 365 password and user versus my Office 3 or versus my normal user I get into my PC. Okay, so that's what that in cloud means. A couple things then that we deal with the users. I just want to hit on here. We can also do what's called single sign-on. Like I said, we can have Bob Smith could be here, could be at my desk, all that kind of stuff. We do synchronize stuff together. That's what this top stuff is, Active Directory synchronization. This typically is not simple stuff to set up. Usually end users don't do that. That's usually stuff we do. One thing though that most people have us do is change the password expiration policy for the users. Office 365, I believe, defaults to 30 days before it makes you change your passwords. You can either set that to a larger number. Best practices say that, yes, have your passwords expire sometime. Most companies, however, come back and say, well, that's a pain in the butt because it expires at the most inopportune moment, and we don't want that. So we have the option here of setting it to never expire or controlling when it expires. Okay, and then users are also given notifications, but they don't pay attention to them as to when they'll expire. So in our case, I've got it set to never expire. If I go back to my users, let's choose a user, and I want to show you some settings for a user. So if I pick a user, I'm going to pick myself. Double click on them. It should bring up the user admin page. Okay, and I can control things such as username, all that kind of stuff. What's important though, if I go to roles, I can control whether this person is an administrator to my Office 365. So if I want to delegate administration to the Office 365, I control that. If I go to settings here, I can turn the user on or off. That's the allowed or blocked. So if I have an employee leave, but I don't want to delete all their stuff, I disable them. Licenses, I can control whether the user has a license or not. I can have more users in my Office 365 environment than I have licenses. Okay. The users, however, who do not have a license assigned to them cannot use the features. So if I do not have an Office 365 license, I cannot get email. If I don't have the right Office 365 license, I can't load Office, that type of thing. In this case, again, I've got Business Premium. If I had as part of my subscription CRM, or say I had E3 or the different versions, I would also see different choices underneath here. And I can assign a user to one or multiple licenses as appropriate. So again, if a user needs more than just one thing, or again, like I said, you can mix and match licenses. This user might only need email, so I'd have only the email the E1 or the, the small business selected. Email addresses. Everybody asks about email addresses, okay? When a user is created in Office 365, they typically get a default email address. We can control what that default email address is. Now, nowadays, though, most people have multiple email addresses. It might be Brian, I might be Brian Jones, I might be Brian.Jones, I might be B Jones, all of that kind of stuff. I can have essentially an unlimited number of email addresses that go to myself. And this is where I can add those. I can add those here, or I can add those in the email administration piece. Mailbox permissions. Mailbox permissions allow other people to access my mailbox. That's really the straight of it there. Sometimes that's needed, sometimes it's not. And then I'm not going to go into the detail stuff there though. So those are the basic user settings. And again, the common ones we can actually edit here on the right side as well. We can edit the licenses, we can edit the email addresses, and we can edit the email, the permissions there. Any questions on users? If I wanted to add a user, I would click the plus. If I wanted to delete a user, I'd select them and I would delete them. Now, if a user is deleted, I should mention this, the user is retained and their data is retained for 30 days. Okay, so if you delete a user and decide, oh, I didn't really mean to do that, there is a way to get that back, and that actually those show up under deleted users here on the left side. And we have 30 days to get those back. If the 31st day comes, those users are gone forever and their email's gone and all their stuff is gone. So we have 30 days if you delete a user in Office 365 to get its data.
Hey, Brian.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask you to go back to, you click on the user and then you look on the email address and the other email addresses, would those be commonly referred to as aliases?
Those are aliases, exactly.
Okay, I got
Yep. And I'll show you when we go into the email part in a little bit, I'll show you how you can control that. You can actually set which one's the primary email address. So when you send an email out, this is what it looks like. But yes, those are aliases. And aliases do not consume an Office 365 license. So again, I could have 100 aliases that all go to one email box. Sales, marketing, Brian, whatever, those could all go to one email box and just consume that single license. So I don't need a license for each of those. Okay. Couple more things before I go to a client PC and show you what it's like to log in as Brian. On the left side here, I have a few special things I can set. Company profile allows me to adjust, my company name, that kind of stuff. Import allows me to import a user list if I'm adding 100 users and I've got a spreadsheet, that type of thing. I can import users. Contacts, and again, we can do this through email too. Contacts are external users to your site that you want to show up in your address books. So in my case, my user is Brian Jones, or Brian at mcigbtest.onmicrosoft.com. That's my test account here. If I want my other user, Brian T. Jones, to show up in my contact lists and to be manipulatable, I can add external users as contacts into Office 365. If you've got vendors or you've got people you deal with all the time and everybody deals with them, you can add those as contacts. That's what that's for. Okay. Shared mailboxes. Shared mailboxes, this is a fairly new thing with Office 365. Shared mailboxes are those mailboxes that you really don't have a single person logging into. It's exactly that. It's a shared mailbox. So you might have a sales mailbox where orders come in, or you might have an invoice mailbox or something like that. These mailboxes can then be assigned to users where if I log in as Brian, Brian has access to the sales mailbox, that type of thing. So these are mailboxes that don't really have a user associated with them, but they're a mailbox. Now, this is a fairly new feature in that you used to have to purchase individual licenses for shared mailboxes. They changed this within the last like 2 months. So I can have a shared mailbox that doesn't require its own license, which is kind of nice.
How does that differ from an alias?
It's a mailbox. So an alias would say I have an alias to Brian at mcigb.com, an alias called sales maybe. That would send any email that went to sales at mcigb.com would go to Brian at mcigb.com. Okay, and it would come literally in my Brian mailbox. If it's a shared mailbox, I send to sales, it will go to the sales mailbox. It will not go to Brian's mailbox. And I'll show you that when we go to the client. You'll see it actually shows up as a second mailbox in my Outlook. So it's separate from my email. Where again we find this, people use this for, again, sales accounts. They might use it for invoicing, accounts payable, accounts receivable, that type of thing. If it's a mailbox you want things to go to, but you don't want it destined to a specific person, that's what that's for. Meeting rooms are resources. So I can assign, and in that case, I've got a conference room created. When I create an appointment, I can check out the conference room as part of that appointment. I could have, it's listed as meeting rooms here. I could have what's called a resource mailbox. I could have, if I had a company car, if I had a projector, if I had a whatever, these are typically things that are not people, but you want to track or you want to use in things like meetings and things like that. That's basically a resource mailbox is what that's called. Groups, we'll go into that in a little bit. Yeah.
That assumes everybody's going to check that every time you send an email.
Yes, that's exactly right. It only works as well as the people using it, right? If you don't check out the car or check out the conference room, it's going to show up that it's available and you can double book it, all that kind of stuff. It again, just depends on the company. Some of the really larger companies with, limited conference rooms, for example, you have to check out a conference room, that type of thing. Okay, what I'm going to do here, any other questions before I leave the portal here for a second? We're about a half hour into it, so I'm pretty much on track with what I think. This should take about an hour is what I'm guessing. Okay, I'm going to go into a client. My client, just for kicks here, happens to be a Windows 10 client. And let me enter my view so I can fit two guests. Oops. Okay, happens to be a Windows 10 machine. I figured I'd show you Windows 10 since I'm here. Windows 10, incidentally, is pretty much a combination of Windows 7 and Windows 8. They took the features that nobody liked in Windows 8, put them back into Windows 7 and kind of did a little tiley thing here. But anyway, otherwise it works pretty much the same as Windows 7 or Windows 8. But I'm going to log into the portal here as my Brian user. So we'll see, when I was logged in before, I was logged in as an administrator, and I could do all sorts of administrative things. Here I'm going to log in as Brian. So I go Brian at mcitest.onmicrosoft.com. Log in as my user. Oops, got to type in my CIGB test. Okay, I go in as a user. My screen is slightly different. I have the ability to use the applications online if I want. Office 365 also gives you the ability to run Excel, Word, Outlook, and it's not really Outlook, it's a mail client through a web browser. So I don't have to have Office loaded on my PC to get into things, okay, which is interesting. And that comes more into play on mobile devices, and if you're at a remote place and you need to quickly edit a document, things like that, that's pretty cool for that. However, one of the first things you typically do when you log in, or when you get a new user in Office 365, you want to load the applications on your PC. So I've got Word, Excel, Outlook on my PC. Couple ways I can get there. Right here on the first screen, I have the ability to install. The other way I can do it is I can go to, I'm going to go to my gear in my Office 365 settings, and I'm going to go to software. Again, the settings here I can change personalizations, passwords, notifications, all that kind of stuff. I won't go in there. But I can go to software, and here I can manage my installs of Microsoft Office. As I mentioned in the beginning, with a Microsoft Office 365 license, you get 5 copies of Microsoft Office. In this case, I have it installed on this PC. I'm not going to go through the install process because I don't want to take the time, but what it will show us is it will show me the 5 machines I've got this installed, and if I want to go to a 6th, I've got to deactivate it from one and I can add it to another. I can pick my version of Office. When I say version, whether it's 32-bit or 64-bit Office. Now, a little blurb on that. You should typically be running the 32-bit version of Office, even if you're running on a 64-bit machine, unless there's a specific reason to run the 64-bit one, okay? You'll find that a lot of plugins and a lot of applications that tie into Office are only 32-bit applications. So you're going to have, you'll run into more trouble if you run a 64-bit version of Office. Again, unless there's specifically a reason that you need 64-bit. So that's why the default is 32-bit. But if you click Advanced here, you can change that to 64-bit and load 64-bit Office. Okay. If I click Install here, it will go start installing it on my PC. Okay. And we'll pretend I did that. It does a little install process. It shows on the screen as it's installing. Once it's installed, what I will find is I will find that I have all the Microsoft Office programs under an Office 2013 group. It installs all of this stuff. Okay. So we'll go back here for a second. A typical first thing that a customer does then is they set up their email. Okay, so I'm going to click on Outlook. Okay, first time I click on Outlook, it's going to prompt me for what's my account. Okay, again, I can read the screen here, but I don't read, so I just click Next. Again, nobody reads, they just click Next. So do I want to set up Outlook and collect an email? Yes. Okay, now here's the pertinent information, and they've made it really smooth and really easy. So I'm gonna type in my name. My email address is brian@mcigb.test.on.microsoft.com. My password again. If I did it all right, it will go magically look for it. If I did it all right, and it found it. And I can change account settings or make adjustments as needed, but I'm not going to. I'm going to click Finish. Say OK. It says I must restart Outlook. Now it should have my settings. Again, I didn't take a whole lot of work there to get that. It'll go out to Office 365 and it'll start getting my email. Now, email is an internet application. When I say it's an internet application, the mail server lives in Office 365. It does not live on your PC, or it does not live in your office. So this is different from traditional running, say you have a mail server in your office. Every piece of email has to go out to the Office 365 server and is received from the Office 365 server. So it does take, obviously, internet bandwidth and in that kind of thing. Your experience with Office 365 is better if you have bigger internet than little internet. But with that said, email is typically not a real-time application. People nowadays kind of expect it to be, but it's not. So there's a download process that happens. When you send a message, there's an upload process that sends it back off to the server. The way the Microsoft stuff works now by default is it downloads a certain amount of email to your local machine, so it looks like it's all local to you, and keeps the rest on the server. If I do nothing, which I haven't done anything here, I just added it to my Outlook, this is what happens. I see my, again, it downloads my email, stuff is in my inbox, I see the other email boxes I have permission to. I have permission to, if we talked about that sales mailbox, if I click on that sales mailbox, it'll go open that sales mailbox, and hey, there I've got a message in the sales mailbox. So Bill, a difference there is if this was an alias, this mail message would not have appeared in the sales mailbox, it would have appeared in my inbox. Okay, that's the difference there. And you could have multiple people can connect to this sales mailbox, and the mail can be left in there, or you can have different rules on it, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so this is my Outlook. I want to show a couple things of importance here. If I go to File, and if I go to my account settings, here I see my account, and I'm going to go to change. There's a couple things I can adjust here. And this is right now, these are the defaults. These, I did nothing. So I'm using cached exchange mode. That means it downloads a certain amount of mail to my PC. That's the recommended way to use Office 365 because it's in the internet. It's not local to your desktop. Here I can control how much email it downloads. Okay. So right now my PC will have 3 months worth of email in its folders and stuff. If I wanted to make that larger, I simply slide the slider. Okay. It's not recommended that you slide it to all because you end up downloading a lot of email all the time. Okay. Defaults are good. Some people like 6 months, some people like a year in their mailbox. It becomes personal preference. One thing that's important here, and I'll talk a little bit about it in a second, is public folders. Public folders are central repositories, if you want to think about it, that are available in Outlook. Microsoft tried to do away with them, but then they brought them back because everybody complained that they were going away. Public folders are a good place to store things like company vacation calendars, maybe company policy manuals, maybe things like that. If it's a place that everybody can or can't have access to depending on permissions. One of the things that's important is if you do use public folders, the default setup of Outlook is to not download public folders. So if you do want to download public folders, you have to go to More Settings, and you have to go to Download Public Folder Favorites. Now that showed up here because I actually already had one. I actually already had my account created. That would not have shown up without this being checked. Okay. And there I've got public folders. So that's typically the only thing I change in there. Otherwise, there's my email. Email, and you click on the bottom, you get your calendar, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go into really training on Outlook though. So that's email setup. The other applications, if I go into another application, let me go into Word or Excel or something. Find my Microsoft Office, Excel. If I go into Excel, you'll notice that my Excel is hooked to my account. Okay. Excel will go and check for a valid Office 365 license. I think it's every 30 days or so. So if you take a license away from a user, eventually their Excel on their PCs will stop working. You know, they have to have a valid Office 365 account for this to work. If you're changing this PC to a different user or changing something, you can switch the account on it as well. So that's what you'll see on the Office 365 versions of the Office products. You're going to see that it's associated with an Office 365 user. In this case, it's Brian. Otherwise, Excel is the same as the Excel that you'd buy off the shelf. All right. Questions on the clients. Okay. What I want to go into next are some of the advanced email things that people ask us about. And a lot of that is controlled through, if I scroll down, I'm back in here as my administrator user. This was my administrator browser screen. If I scroll down to the bottom and go to Exchange, Exchange is the Microsoft email server. So I click on Exchange, and it brings me into email specific stuff. Okay, couple things that people always ask about. If I go to the recipients, one of the things people always want to do are create, again, email groups. If I go to groups here, I've got an example would be a group called managers. So if I send an email to managers at MCIGB Test, it will go to everybody in that managers group. If I double click on it, we can see the details of the group. We control who has permission to manipulate this group. By default, it's the admin. Who's a member of this group? Now, if you remember earlier, I mentioned contacts. Contacts can be members of internal groups. That's where contacts are really useful. So again, if you've got somebody outside your company that's not in your email system, but you want them to be part of a distribution group, you can add them as a contact, then you can add that contact to the group and do stuff with them. Let's see. Email options, I can control the email addresses for the group. Just like a user, I could have aliases set up so I could have multiple email addresses on a group as well. Okay. Again, if an email is sent to a group, that email is delivered as a separate copy to every user in that group. Okay, so that's how that works. The other thing that is important about groups, by default, it is set this way. Only senders inside my organization can send to the group. Okay, so keep this in mind. So if you've got somebody outside your company that wants to send, or if you want to open this up, say it's invoices or sales or something like that, you want to open it up to the outside world, you have to come in to the group, delivery management, and you have to allow outside the organization to send to it. You can also control specifically who can send to a group as well if you want to. But the default is that where it's only inside. So that bites people once in a while, where they go and they create a group, they try and send an email from their Gmail account or something, and it never gets there, or it gets bounced back. This is why. By default, users are not allowed to send to a group externally. Okay, so that's groups. Any questions there before I go on? And again, the same types of things that I could manipulate from that first admin screen. The mailboxes, I see my users here. I can go in, Brian Jones, I can go in, I can create aliases. I actually have more email granularity here. If I click on my email addresses, I can add more email addresses. I can delegate who can access my email box, all that kind of stuff. Same type of thing that I could do from the user screen out in the admin of Office 365, but I've actually got more choices here. Mailbox, I think it's mailbox features. One of these allows me to do the forwarding of an email. So again, if you have an employee maybe leave the company, You can leave his email active and have the email forwarded automatically to a different user. That's under mailbox features and mail flow. And again, there's a lot of stuff that you can do in here. One thing that I should mention is Office 365 is very good with its online help. So if you're ever into a screen, you're going to find in the top right corner a little help here. You click on that and it will bring you to probably more information than you care to know about this screen and about the process that you're looking for. That is one thing that's good about Office 365. It's been out there a while, and Microsoft does a good job of publishing help. Okay. So those are the email recipients. Again, mailboxes, groups, resources. We saw the resources, contacts, shared migration. Migration is used for importing users and stuff in there. Another thing that people ask about is spam. Okay, what happens to my spam? Where does my spam go? How does it all work in Office 365? Office 365 includes a fairly comprehensive spam filtering system that actually works pretty well. So you don't need a third-party product like WebSense or something like that with Office 365 email accounts. They're automatically filtered for both malware. Malware would be viruses in emails, and filtered for spam. Okay. The default thing that happens if we want to look, for example, at spam, there is a default filter that is set up, and this is applied to all of the users. Now, I could go create different filters and apply them to different users if I wanted to change it. For the most part, the default does very well. So we say don't change it unless there's a reason to change it. But I can control what happens. If I get spam, it moves it to the junk email folder. If I get high confidence spam, it moves it to the junk email folder. And I can control how long stuff stays, and I can move to quarantine. I can move to different things. I can do different things with the spam. Again, this is default. So if I were to go back to my Windows 10 server, back into my Outlook, back to my mailbox, I sent myself some test spam messages, and you're going to see I've got an email with some test spam in there. So users can control their spam through their junk email in Outlook, which is kind of nifty. But that's included as part of Office 365. And again, if the rules are too tight or too loose, you can talk to us and we can help you adjust these. We've actually found that the default rules do very well, and people typically don't end up losing email. Okay. Any questions there? Okay. Public folders. Kind of the last thing I want to talk about before I go into mobile devices, and we've got about 10 minutes left on my clock here. Public folders. Public folders by default do not exist, or are not turned on, I should say. Not that they don't exist. They're not turned on in Outlook or Office 365. Let me go back to my test system. Let me go down to my public folder. Public folders. Public folders. A use for a public folder would be, expand underneath it, would be maybe a vacation schedule, where you've got a company vacation schedule, or maybe a delivery schedule, or maybe company information such as, we use it internally for things such as our company handbook or our policy manual, that kind of stuff. Those live in our public folders because everybody in the company typically uses their email and has access to this stuff. Okay. From the administration, I can control what those public folders are called. If I click on it, it'll drill down into different sub-levels. Now, I'm going to go back up to the top level, which I called public folder. I can assign permissions to this folder, oops, and I did the wrong button again. I can assign permissions to this public folder, and once a person is assigned permissions, they can add and manipulate that public folder through Outlook. So the user does not have to come in here and do foldery thing or do permissiony things or add folders. I can go into Outlook, I can right click, I can create new calendars, folders, whatever I want. And I can control permissions on those. If I look at Brian here, here's the types of things I can control on a public folder. In this case, I gave myself owner permission, which means that, again, back on my client in my public folder, I could right click and I could go a new folder. It asks me what type of folder. Is it contacts, mail? If I scroll up, calendar. Say I want to create a new calendar folder that had a delivery calendar. So I want to create a new delivery calendar. Say OK. It will go create a delivery calendar. Now, if I wanted to control, oops, I got too carried away. If I wanted to control permissions to that calendar, okay, by default, when I create the calendar, it doesn't necessarily give permission to everybody. You have to assign permissions. Now I gotta again figure out what I'm doing. Public folders, delivery. If I right click on it, go to properties, go to permissions, default. Oh, I do have the default set for author. So people can create items, they can edit the items that they own, they can delete the items that they own. Again, and you can manipulate these permissions however you need them to be. You know, if it's read only, you set it to read only, or you set it, you know, you pick one of the pre-chosen ones, or you can push the buttons depending on what you want. But that's what a public folder is. Again, a couple keys back to it is you have to first create it, create the top level in the admin center. You can set permissions in here. You have to give a person permissions. Once that person has permissions, then they can manipulate them through Outlook. The other catch is on the Outlook client, again, in the properties of the user setup or the properties of the user profile there, we have to show or download public folders because they don't download to the clients by default. Okay. Questions, comments? All right, what I'm going to do, last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring up an iPad and we'll show a little bit about, here's an iPad. We'll show a little bit about setting up these things, these devices for Office 365. First thing somebody typically wants to do is hey, I want to receive my email on my phone, or I want to receive my email on my iPad. Again, I'm doing it with an Apple device. Android devices are similar. If I click on mail, wait for it to come up. I don't have any mail accounts set up on this iPad. So I'm going to pick what type of mail it is. These are Exchange. If you're Office 365, you're Exchange. So I'm going to click Exchange. And it asked me for my information. I'm going to go Brian at mcrosoft.com. Password, my password. And I can give it a name if I wanted to, or I can just leave the name the default. Give it a next. You'll go out there and it'll look for it. Oh, and checkboxes are good. Okay. Then it asks, what do I want to pull down to my device? Do I want contacts, calendars, reminders, notes? Yeah, I want everything. Again, you can manipulate what you want and what you don't want. Give it a save. It's going and adding my account. And if I give it a minute, it's checking for mail. If you notice in the bottom left corner, it says checking for mail. Now it's downloading. We should see my inbox in just a moment here. Boop. And there's my inbox. So this is the same mail that we saw on my Outlook client. It's really that simple. Now when I create, if I want to create a message on there, I can create a message and it does the magic and goes back out through Office 365, and it basically just works. Again, simple because it just works. So the other thing that Office 365 offers for these devices is versions of Microsoft Office products that run on these. If I go into my web browser, and if I go to my portal, just like on my PC, I'm going to portal.office.com. I'm going to log in as myself. Brian at mcigbtest. That's a long name to type. Sign in. It's smart enough to recognize that I'm on an iPad, and if I want these applications for my iPad, now I could have gone directly to the App Store, but if I'm not sure where they are, what they're called, if I want Word on my iPad, I can click on that and it will bring up the link to the App Store for Word. We think it does. It will. And I've got it already installed. I'm going to open it. We think. And what it will prompt me for, it will prompt me for a username and password. Because again, to use the Office products on the mobile devices, you need an Office 365 subscription. So I follow the screen here, and I'm not going to do it for lack of time here, but I would log in again as my Brian user. Then I have the ability to use Word on my device. One more thing I should mention, and we'll probably cover more of it in our second session, is a thing called OneDrive. OneDrive is actually part of Office, and it can be loaded from the little left side here. OneDrive allows me to synchronize documents, kind of like if you've ever used Dropbox or something like that. It's basically Microsoft's version of Dropbox, but they give you a super large amount of space. It was a terabyte. I think there was talk about it being unlimited. So I can upload, or I can put files in my OneDrive location. And if I expand my PC, it actually shows up here on the left side. Oops, and I'm not logged in. But I can drop files in here. They will show up then on my iPad. They will show up on anything that has access to that OneDrive account. And again, that's all part of the Office 365 for that user. And I think I'm going to go into that more in the next session as to how you use that, how you share files, how you share documents, things like that. With that said, I'm kind of at the end of my my time here. Other questions? Is there something you want to see or anything I can talk about?
Brian, I just have one question. Do we need to do backups of our Outlooks?
No, that's a good question. The way the backups work for that is there's an automatic retention time. I think it's 30 days is the default. That is set somewhere in here. There's a setting in the Exchange admin server here that controls how long email is kept. But I believe it's 30 days. So you can go in and you can recover messages that have been deleted and emptied from your deleted items for up to 30 days. It does not do, for example, I can't go and get an email from 2 years ago, that type of thing. There's another product that's an add-on to Office 365 that does archiving that does allow you to do that. As far as the OneDrive stuff, the OneDrive has a retention too. I think it's 30 days as well. So if you delete something, it's 30 days to get it back. But I think that's adjustable.
What about the contacts and that in?
Well, contacts are part of the email. Contacts are part of everything in Exchange or everything in Outlook is basically an email message. So yeah, contacts would last 30 days. Okay. The way you can, if you wanted to, you say don't do, or I say don't do this, but that would be a legitimate reason for if you wanted to, take your contacts and archive them or something like that. There's the ability to archive them in Outlook if you want to just take an offline copy. Again, the theory is that it's all just kind of kept in Office 365, and if you don't need it, it goes away. But different people have different needs.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Other questions? Okay.
Thank you. I've got to get going here.
Yep. All right. What we're going to do? We're going to do another one of these, I think. And what we'll do is we'll cover more of the OneDrive, and we'll cover more of the people are interested in SharePoint. We'll do some basic SharePoint setup, creating like a shared company calendar and maybe a shared company site. And that would probably take the better part of an hour to do that. If you're interested, we'll send around an email. But thank you all for attending. And again, if you do have questions, I go back to my next steps questions. Again, if you do have questions, send them off to support@mcigb.com or brian@mcigb.com, and I'll try and answer them. So thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks, Brian.
Yep.